Okay, ready? All right, so my name is Chris. I'm a teacher in Southwest Sydney, and early into the genocide in Gaza, maybe 6 months after the bombing and the mass slaughter of people, we had a big body of the student population wanting to agitate around Gaza. They were talking about it in class. They were wanting to express solidarity with the people that were afflicted by Israel's campaign. The executive at the school then responded by turning to harm reduction. That was their mantra of don't talk about it, don't bring it up. It's not something that a school should be talking about. It's too political. What that then culminated in was students then being penalized for expression of solidarity with Gaza. That would include wristbands, drawings, even just writing in their book, Free Palestine. It had become this policed aspect of school. And soon after, we had uproar within the community, we had uproar within the student body, and eventually uproar within the teachers, because we were the ones that were told to enforce this. What then happened was there was discussions had with individual staff members, particularly those of Palestinian background, and we started to organize around what we can do to change course. How is it that we can be in an area predominantly with Middle Eastern people, now having to police the Palestinian flag and the keffiyeh? We had conversations with staff members all across each faculty, and we decided that a motion in solidarity with the students and their expressions was the right way to go. The executive staff at the time decided that a motion would not be appropriate. It's too political and it's a confrontational, a risk of confrontation. We went forward with the motion, and the motion set out the following. It set out that teachers will support students expressing solidarity with Palestinian students and any expression of solidarity with Palestinians. We will also allow students to wear the keffiyeh, and we express support for staff members that wish to wear the keffiyeh. During that time, before the motion actually went ahead, we had discussions with staff members, and there was a clear hesitancy to supporting teachers wearing the keffiyeh for fear of being put in the limelight of not wearing the keffiyeh. So this culture of fear. I had multiple conversations trying to inoculate people against that idea that students don't need people to be in visible solidarity. We need to stop the penalizing. We need to allow the students to express the things that they want. When the motion went ahead, we had a long, I think 1.5 hour back and forth, speaking for and against that motion. We had members of exec speaking against it, and we have the predominantly Middle Eastern staff speaking for it, arguing that it is a cultural symbol, that it isn't something that should be considered political, and that expression of solidarity with Palestinian people is something that students can do. After the motion, obviously I wasn't very popular amongst exec staff, but the outcome was that we did stop penalizing, and students did stop starting to have arguments with teachers around if they support Israel. The outcome was proof that that motion was needed, and yeah, that had been like a six month long ordeal, essentially. Yeah. Is there any questions?
When you say 6 months, does that include like,
When the issue was like first brought up.
yeah, so just a bit of context maybe before, like what was happening in the school before that, how people in the exec were responding to that, maybe the messaging that was then coming back down from them. maybe in faculty meetings, for example, or during a staff race.
Mm-hmm.
And then were there, obviously, for you, like when you started to think about we need to do something, maybe some of the preliminary steps that happened before the, I guess, before the workshopping as well, in terms of going and speaking to teachers. And with that workshopping, was there like, specific organizational plans? Like you would go to people and would say, okay, these people really well, can you go talk to them about it? These people really well, can you talk to them about it? And I guess a part of that too is, was there any like shit being thrown from executive members in those faculties? And on that as well, were there any executive members that were actually on side with this too?
So the lead up to that workshopping was a Palestinian member of staff wore the keffiyeh. They were then not dragged, but brought into the exec's office and told that you can't be wearing this keffiyeh. In response to that, we had members who were close to that individual staff member, and the discussion quickly became, that's not appropriate. And it now became a rallying point of, we have to protect this person. They've already gone through so much. And that was something that I think led people to take this issue on board a bit more. The messaging from exec was fairly wide net sort of comments that we must shut down conversations around this. This is to protect you. This is to make sure that you are not in the firing line from students accusing you of being pro-Israeli. And obviously this was a deflection from what was happening, which was the reprimanding of a Palestinian member of staff. After the conversation that that staff member had with exec, they came to me and they said, I'm not willing to give this up. I'm willing to go through any disciplinary measures. And then that's when the workshopping began. During that workshopping time, exec members started to push harder against the motion. There were threats of formal complaints. There was even accusations to myself as being threatening. When I asked if there's a possibility this policy could be reversed or changed, then the motion doesn't need to go ahead. I was then accused of being threatening as a result of that. But the school body as a whole, from what I can tell, wasn't receiving messages about this motion prior to the motion happening. So it was a little bit of a grace that I could workshop and only have to work with the harm reduction sort of narrative, that this is all for the benefit of our students, to not re-traumatize them, which again was not what we could see. The students were traumatized from us confiscating things, reprimanding them, and not discussing something that they cared deeply about. And I think staff members could see that. And that was my sticking point with that workshopping. Yeah.
When you say you had discussions with groups or individuals affected, was that from a union lens? Like, were you doing that as Fed Rep, or how did you approach that?
I sort of I didn't really stick to a purely Fed Rep sense. I did tie into some personal relationships. Had a lot of Greek members of staff who some feel as though that because they've experienced or seen similar conflicts before, that they had they were on the receiving end of both the anti-Israel or the anti-colonial attitude. They obviously having, especially Cypriots who were in the midst of that conflict, felt as though that they weren't on the same page. So discussions around like anti-colonial resistance is the same in Cyprus as it is in occupied Palestine. And there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of historical conversation, people who were unwilling to change their views on the historical version of events, but eventually we're able to see that regardless of how you feel, this is not an effective policy. People are getting more frustrated, more angry, more divided with the confiscation. So I didn't really purely stick to this is what Federation says, this is what a FedRep can do for you. This is a broader issue that we need to understand. And there was, essentially a form of political education not tied to the Federation or workplaces. It was the broader sense.
When the decision changes, or when the practice at the school changes, is that announced formally by the school leadership, or is it one of those things that just kind of is a change the next day, but it just happens silently? And how concrete was that? And you do mention the Federation. What kind of support did you or did you not get through that process from Federation in a formalised sense? So what did that look like? What do you wish was there if it wasn't there? Yeah.
So the day after the motion, and I would say the very next day, the policy was reversed silently. I think there would have been a 2-second sort of briefing on what the guideline was for documenting any sort of breaches of uniform or any display of Palestinian solidarity. It was a 2-second thing. We're no longer needing that as a negative entry. That would be a neutral entry if you feel it necessary. It became a personal choice. Most staff members, already overburdened with work, felt it was no longer necessary to even document as neutral. So I took that as a win. The support from Federation was good. My organizer was able to come facilitate meetings, was able to run a ballot, and was able to support by chairing the meeting whilst I presented the motion. We both felt it was necessary that I chaired the motion because it had been something that I had already discussed with the individual members of staff. So tying that to some of the conversations we've had would be, in my opinion, helpful. And yeah, in terms of what I wish Federation could have done, at the time it was still early on. So the statements from Federation around opposing Israel's genocidal policies were good. Any additional information to provide context as to why this is a educational matter, that I think was a hurdle that I faced, where a lot of staff members felt like, look, this is not something I want to get involved in. There was that this issue and myself and my work are not overly linked. And that's probably what I then had to step in with.
I've got, there's 2 questions, one's a really short one. What was the breakdown of the vote? I was interested that the choice, and I'd be interested to hear why you made the choice making it secret. The other thing, during the Lebanon War, I was at the same school, and we did use that harm minimisation